Namaste. Welcome back, beautiful souls, to the Hierophant episode of the Arthurian series. And today I have 4 cards on the table. I've also included the Taliesin card from the Llewellyn deck, and I may be sharing from little bits from any or all of these Arthurian legends or the connections to Taliesin, though that is not the character that is featured in Claire Duval's deck. And I want to start with that today. In the beginning, the opening of her pages in this wonderful guidebook are these short inspirational paragraphs. And she writes, in the living languages of your long-standing, your ancient ancestors, resides the wisdom of yesterday. And today, maybe, just maybe, you will discover the words that will guide your steps. And I love the idea of living language, the idea that we may hear echoes of our ancestors in the words of mentors, even in the wind. There's something here about that feels really important. And then Claire goes on, and in her card, she uses, I believe I talked about this already when I did the 3-card comparison. I did a video of all 3 Arthur decks side by side. And I believed I talked about that in this video. And you may have heard that I'm a fan. It's been a while since I've seen this series, of the Merlin series. And in the Merlin TV series, Gaius is the character that is based on this particular energy here, which is Blaise, who in that TV series is the mentor of Merlin. And Claire writes in her guidebook that the Hierophant is a great card of transmission of knowledge and education. I've always been fascinated with this card. Sometimes it appears as a wise one of an Aboriginal chief or warlord, or someone who is sitting around a fire and guiding others. It could be a shaman. Sometimes it's a contemporary yoga teacher. And there is this idea that they have an open channel to another realm and are able to bring through what their congregation, their students, their devotees are ready to hear in this moment. And it's the message of transmission that feels so very important. And I also connect this to a personal experience where, and I'm sorry if you've heard this story before, this was an advanced yoga teacher training over the course of about a month, I believe. We were staying on site, and every night we were very tired. We'd done a lot of physical asana. We'd done a lot of meditation and chanting. We had done seva, karma yoga. And yet every night we sat and we listened, in translation, in English granted, to an ancient text, an ancient Indian text. And our teacher believed, no matter how tired we were, even though it was in translation, that there was a transmission that we were all ready to receive just in listening to the words of this text, full of story and metaphor. And it was a really interesting experience. This idea of transmission is an important thing to ponder in terms of this card. Depending, this is Claire Duval's words in translation, depending on the question asked, It may be necessary to embark on a new apprenticeship, or you may be able to seek guidance and comfort from your ancestors. This is a little different than the idea of the bard. So I'm going to read to you a little bit about some of the stories of Taliesin and the powers of the Welsh bard, the powers of the bard, of the poet of these times. When I look at the Anna Marie Ferguson painting, it reminds me a little bit of Jesus and those images you see, paintings with the children gathered around Jesus. Tell me the stories of Jesus. That these young ones are somehow able to capture the mystery and the magic and the essence of these old teachings and integrate them in a very special way. Taliesin, so this is from Anna Marie Ferguson's words, introduces the children to his lady, the harp. Orpheus charmed his way to the underworld and back by way of his music. Music is a passage to the other world, and this is why the harp has been substituted for the keys traditionally found in the hand of the Hierophant or other places on the card. Taliesin encourages questions from the royal and less privileged children alike. He fosters their creative artistic talents and passes on the age-old lore, providing the children with a foundation for their own flights of fancy. By investing in the children's imagination and awakening their talents, the stories of the past will live on, and the connection with the other world and its guides will continue. This is Taliesin's charge as custodian of the ancient lore. The feathers in his hair and the necklace strung with the tokens of his incarnations attest to his renowned shape-shifting abilities. And this makes me think again of other decks where this particular position is captured as a shapeshifter of sorts, a shaman dressed in furs and feathers. The bard embodies all the knowledge of these animal lives. Like Merlin, Taliesin has a close connection with the old ones. The stream and the stone figures of the old gods reflect this bond. It is through his connection with the otherworldly, particularly the cauldron of Ceridwen, that he acquires his inspiration and profound knowledge. And we will get to that in the Temperance card, because that is the Temperance card in Anna Marie Ferguson's deck, the Cauldron of Ceridwen. The jewelry he wears speaks of the affection and respect he is granted. His patron rewards him well for his services. The political power of this famed Welsh bard could not be underestimated, though his craft could bestow a king with an honored place in history or destroy him with scorching satire. So when I look at a card like this, I'm contemplating transmissions, the purpose of transmissions. They may come through me. I may hear them. They may be part of a text that I'm studying. It might come in any sort of way, a random sign on a billboard or a song that is playing on the radio. Something in my life at this time is acting as a conduit for the divine. And back to the Anna Marie Ferguson guidebook. Taliesin was a 6th century poet and one of the 5 chief bards of the Isle of the Mighty. As with his contemporaries, fantastic tales have naturally grown up around Taliesin. Our story begins with the bard as a young boy named Gwion. The great witch Ceridwen assigned him the task of tending her cauldron. For a year and a day he was to stir the magical brew. Ceridwen would then give the mixture, a great source of knowledge, to her son as a compensation for his hideous appearance. As the fateful day drew near, Gwion accidentally splashed himself with the brew. In licking 3 drops off his fingers, he became the unintended recipient of the all-knowing, and thus became aware of Ceridwen's plans to kill him once he had served his purpose. What remained of the brew was now only poison, and the enraged Ceridwen gave chase. With his newly acquired gifts, Gwion shifted his shape into that of a hare. Ceridwen followed in the shape of a greyhound. He took to a stream, becoming a fish. Ceridwen followed as an otter. He took to the air as a small bird. She followed as a hawk. Lastly, Gwion became a grain of wheat. Ceridwen, in the shape of a black hen, swallowed him. Returning to her own shape, Ceridwen was now pregnant with Gwion. In time, she gave birth to the child. This parable of bardic initiation sees the young poet establish his essential links with the other world, in which all levels of reality and wisdom are available. By means of his totemic associations with different birds, beasts, and fish, each of whom represent a level of knowledge, the poet is able to participate simultaneously in every part of creation in an omniscient way. He knows what has happened in the deep past and what will happen in the times to come. On seeing his beauty, however, she could not bring herself to kill him, but set him adrift upon the sea in a leather bag. Elphin, the nephew of King Maelgwyn, found the bag caught on a salmon weir. He carefully opened it, and on seeing the child, exclaimed, "Behold a radiant brow." And so the child was named Taliesin, meaning radiant brow. Elphin's family took him into their care and raised him. Taliesin's power first attracted attention when he journeyed to the court of King Maelgwyn to rescue his imprisoned patron, Elphin. To avoid interference from the haughty resident bards, Taliesin cast a spell upon them, so that the only words they could speak were blurrin, blurrin. To add to their indignity, the enchantment also caused them to compulsively finger their bottom lips. Under the disdainful glare of the king, the chief bard, Hainin, strained against the spell. After what seemed an eternity, Hainin managed to blurt out that they were not drunk, as it seemed, but were under a spell cast by the boy in the corner. Now, commanding the king's undivided attention, Taliesin stepped forward. The king asked him who he was, and in reply, Taliesin began to recite his now famous poem of I Have Beens, recounting his many incarnations. With the sound of his voice, the chains that held Elphin fell away. Taliesin then began to foretell the future of Britain. As he spoke, the wind rose until it raged, shaking the hall and nearly drowning his words. As the prophecies drew to a close, the wind subsided, leaving all quiet for the whispered chants of the bards. All of this adds another layer to the idea of transmission, and that is the power of Vok, the power of the word, that we must be impeccable with our thoughts and our words, that when we get to a certain point of clarity, a certain point of awareness, awakeness, that there truly is a power to our thoughts and our word. And that is not something outside of a deck like this that I would necessarily bring into the Hierophant card. More recently, the qualities of Taurus, the earthen nature of its connection to Venus and the suit of the earth, has made this a very rich teaching. And rather than focusing on these earthy qualities or these sensorial experiences, what I'm really hearing here is that this is a card of thought and mind and word and transmission, which feels very airy rather than very earthy. So what I want to ask you is about your history with this card and the qualities of air and thought and mind and voice versus the richness, the earthy sensorial experiences, and enjoyments of food and clothing and fabric and being here indeed on this plane to enjoy all of these things. And I wonder perhaps if Taliesin channels these messages, translating them for us to interpret so that we can better experience, better live this earthy experience. As always, I look forward to your response and your connection to these stories. Thank you. Namaste.